Hey everyone, it's me, Legendary Flaro, and I know it's a little late making this video considering how Halloween Kills, the new movie of the Halloween franchise, came out like a month ago, and I watched it, and I'll let you know what I think of that and the rest of this franchise. And on top of that, it's past Halloween, which is, well, the main theme for this whole franchise, just by the title of it. But why I decided to make it now, you'll find out later in the video. But still, before I start this off, I just want to say that once I get to 163 subscribers, I'll do my ranking on the Evil Dead franchise, which I just finished it, and it was great. And definitely up there as one of my favorite horror franchises. Well, franchises of all time. Yeah, I don't know. But it's great. Anyway. And once I get to 200 subscribers, I'll do videos about other horror movies that I like, along with creepypastas. So, I'm going to be ranking the Halloween franchise from best to worst, and I know it's different. I usually do worst to best, but because this franchise has had a lot of bad movies, they're the ones I'm mainly going to be focusing on, so that's why I'm doing best to worst. And I, of course, decided to do it the same way the Black Lion did when he was ranking the main villains of The Flash. But anyway, let's get on to this ranking. At first place, it's the original Halloween. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And you honestly should have known this before you even clicked on the video. It is my favorite horror movie, one of the best movies ever made, and one of the good examples of why John Carpenter is one of the best directors. Next to James Cameron, Wes Craven, Sam Raimi, etc. And this was the first horror movie I've ever seen as well, since Isaac Seaver got me into it, and both this and Friday the 13th. So if you're watching this, thank you for introducing me to this franchise. And then, at first time, I wasn't even that scared, I was just enjoying it. But then, next two times I've seen it, it was actually really scary. And it definitely just shows how much good directing John Carpenter has. And I'm even excited for next October when I rewatch this and the next two I'll be talking about to prepare for Halloween Ends. And that's really all I have to say. Coming in at my number 2 is Halloween Kills. Now, I know this is a shocker for a lot of people, and despite this video being about the worst of the Halloween movies, this one is the main reason why I've wanted to do this video, because a lot of people have been criticizing it for the stupidest reasons. Now, of course, we'll find out what is the worst Halloween movie at the end of the video. At least in my opinion. Some say it's this movie for some reason. Well, reasons I will be explaining soon. Some say it's Halloween's 2 or 3. Others say it's Halloween Resurrection, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, etc. But pretty much, this is definitely one of the best films of the year for me. and it's definitely the scariest and most terrifying Michael Myers has ever been. The kills were very bloody, and it definitely corrected a lot of problems I had with Halloween 2018, where they had dislikable characters, but here they are actually likable, that is, before they die. And then we had a fan favorite character, Tommy Doyle, return, and this time he's actually likable, and he became one of my favorite characters next to Michael, Laurie Strode, and Sam Loomis. And it just makes me even more excited for Halloween Ends. While the reason people criticize this movie is, of course, because some of the victims he killed were gay, and as in a gay couple, and of course, because of the world we live in today, he's homophobic. But really, he's not. Michael Myers, he doesn't care who you are, if you're white, black, gay, straight, male, female, he's gonna kill you either way. So, to him, there is no Black Lives Matter or Gay Lives Matter. To him, no lives matter. Okay? He's a serial killer. He doesn't care about your gender, race, or sexual orientation. So, you gotta come up with a better excuse to hate this movie, but if you're one of them, please explain to me why, and don't tell me it's the reason I just explained. So now let's move on. Coming in at my number 3 is Halloween 2018. Now, this was definitely a major comeback for the franchise. I mean, not only was it a huge comeback from the last 3 movies we've had, but also it was easily the best movie since the original. Like, for starters, it erased Halloween 2 and the other sequels by making Michael and Laurie no longer siblings, and then it was like H2O, only it takes place 40 years later instead of 20 years later, and it was better. Definitely got me excited for kills when I first watched it, and even more excited for ends, and like I said before, I can't wait to watch these top 3 next October to prepare for Halloween Ends. However, it still has a couple of flaws, like, for one, like I mentioned earlier, there was dislikable characters such as Karen, and then Cameron, and a lot of those other people, which, if you've seen the movie, you'd probably understand why. But then, of course, the title, how it's Halloween when that's the name of the original. I mean, of course, if it was a remake, it would have been a lot different. But since it's Halloween and not Halloween 2 or Halloween H4O or something, it's just Halloween. They could have came up with something different from that. I know that they're doing something similar to that in the new Scream movie, but still, I just think it's weird, and I can't even call this Halloween 2 because we already have a Halloween 2. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I can say. Not a perfect movie, but it's still great and a major comeback for the franchise. Coming in at number 4 is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. A movie that was hated by so many people who loved the first 2, but over time, people began to like it more after, well, a lot of movies that we all agree are so much worse, and not only that, but this is pretty much an underrated classic, and a lot of people are starting to appreciate what this was trying to do. Tell a completely different story and make this an anthology series where they would take place in completely different universes, but still be horror stories about Halloween, or, well, taking place around the season. And I definitely liked what they did here. It was terrifying in a lot of parts, and I definitely would have liked to see where they would have went on with how Halloween 4 could have turned out and such, as in if it wasn't the return of Michael Myers. And, of course, the only reason why it's this low is mainly because it kind of failed what it wanted to be, and it's a little pointless since it was not an anthology series like how it was trying to be, and instead we got more Michael Myers movies. So, unfortunately, it wasn't like the classic it could have been if it was its own horror movie outside the Halloween franchise, but definitely having one of the best ideas. Coming in at number 5 is Halloween 2. Now, this is, well, a movie that is mostly loved by the fan base, yet the creator, John Carpenter, thinks this is an abomination, all because Michael and Laurie are siblings, and he originally envisioned Michael Myers as this motiveless killer who kills because he can, which is why we got Halloween 2018, and we got more information of why he did it in Kills, and I can't wait to find out more in Ends. And it was definitely nice with the whole trying to be like Friday the 13th, after Friday the 13th was ripping off the success of Halloween, adding more gore into it. Even though there were some moments that were boring here and there. So, isn't a perfect movie, but it's still one of the better Halloween movies, and these top 5 are the only great movies on this list, while everything else isn't so great, but is still a pretty solid horror flick. Coming in at number 6 is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Well, unfortunately, this was the last great movie we've had in the franchise for 10 years. And that's a shame because this has always been a very unique one in the franchise. Definitely has a really good cliffhanger of Jamie Lloyd becoming the new killer. And, of course, it was a back-to-basics sequel, even though it had to go back to the Michael Myers storyline because of all the backlash Season of the Witch got. And it was good seeing Dr. Loomis again, and very intense in a lot of scenes. However, the things that do bring it down for me for calling this a great movie is Michael's mask which looks absolutely ridiculous, how it's so blank, it's hard to take seriously. And mainly how the ending could have set up for something so good in Halloween 5, but then turned out it wasn't, which I'll definitely be talking about later. Coming in at number 7 is Halloween H2O 20 years later. Now, this is one of the most memorable, like Halloween 4, yet, unfortunately, another thing it has in common with Return is the fact how, and the main things on why it's memorable get screwed up in the sequel, which we'll talk about later in this video. And the main reason why it's so low is not really much happened in this movie other than the fact that it ignored the Thorn trilogy, I'm glad they did that because after all, like I will be talking about later, it's gotten really dumb adding so much to the Halloween mythos that didn't make any sense. But the ending did get badass where Laurie and Michael have their final showdown and then she decapitates him. And that's pretty much all I have to say. And although it does have some flaws other than that, such as the title is called H2O, which it's hard to take seriously because it has nothing to do with water. And also, I'm not a fan of Michael's mask, how you can just see his eyes. And then one scene with the CGI mask I thought was stupid, but other than that, this is one of the better Halloween movies, even though everything with H2O and all of the movies I just talked about are the only good movies in this franchise, while everything else are the bad movies that you've been waiting for me to talk for a while now. Now, this is the part where I'm going to be talking about the bad movies, and at number 7 is the Halloween remake. Which, oh boy, I have only little things to say that were good about this movie, and I'm not saying this is better than the bottom 4, or that the one I consider is the worst of the franchise is the worst, but the bottom 5 are pretty much interchangeable, and the reasons why these movies are bad are easily why this could be worse than the ones below it. The only good things I'd say, Tyler Mane was not a bad choice for Michael Myers. He is incredibly scary because of how tall he is, how brutal he is, and how gory the kills are. And I do appreciate giving Michael a different backstory because they wanted to do something different. But that's pretty much all I have to say that's good about this movie. And before I start ranting on it, I just want to point out that it's such a shame because Rob Zombie is a great music maker, but not so much a movie director. And the reason why is, for starters, with making Michael more relatable, it just ruins what made him so scary in the original, where you don't know why he kills. But here they focus way too much on that, and it's so unwatchable. Like, the dialogue, everyone talks like they're drunk, and it's so next level bad, I can't even quote it in my videos. You just have to see it for yourself. And then they force it in at the point where they never explain why Michael is unkillable. Which, of course, in the original we didn't know why either. But the reason why that one gets a pass and not this is because we didn't see any background information on why he did what he did. Here, there was no possible way how he could have encountered a supernatural force, and it doesn't help with how they turned Laurie Strode, one of the best final girls in horror history, into an unlikable bitch. And then it's a bad rehash of the original. So overall, it's definitely one of the worst horror remakes out there, which is funny because I haven't seen that many bad horror remakes aside from this and The Nightmare on Rehash. And then, other than that, I've only seen good horror remakes. If there's any other bad ones, please let me know in the comments below. But it doesn't help with how the reason why this movie doesn't make any sense, it just got worse in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which I'll talk about later. First, there's a few more movies I have to talk about. Coming in at number 9 is Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers. This is just so disappointing. We came from a very interesting high note that was Return, where Michael is gone and Jamie Lloyd is the new killer. And we want to know how that happened from there. Turns out that's not the movie we had. What really happened is Michael was swimming in a river, and then a hermit took him to the camp for some reason, where he fell asleep for a year to get a ridiculous mask. And then Jamie is all of a sudden paralyzed and can possess Michael while seeing weird stuff. That's pretty much all it is, and that really pissed me off, and it's such a shame that they've gone with that direction. And there also was so bad with the police officers with the clown music playing. This is a horror movie, not a Looney Tunes live action episode. And the characters are very unlikable, and there's honestly a lot that I can't really remember because this one is forgettable compared to everything else in this franchise, aside from the fact that this is where it started to go downhill. And obviously, if you've seen my video, Top 10 Bad Movies That Could Have Been Great, you know that I'm definitely not a fan of this movie. But the bottom 3 are the ones I usually debate which is worse, just because of how terrible they are. But like I said, these bottom 5 are all interchangeable. Coming in at number 10 is Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. Now, this movie isn't that much better than my bottom 2, although the only things I do agree with people saying that aren't good is Michael's mask. That's about it. Everything else I absolutely hate about this movie. For starters, the kills are very poor, and not even scary like people say, or brutal. All it is just stab, flash, stab, flash. Like, it feels like I'm watching a fan film, or it's just very low budget compared to how it should be. Not only that, but it was so unnecessary. And on top of that, the plot does not make any sense whatsoever, with the Michael being some cult puppet where every time the Halloween thorn symbol shows up in the sky, he appears. When, okay, then how come he could never use his Halloween powers to escape from the asylum he was trapped in for 15 years, or wake up from the coma he was in? And don't say you can't wake up from a coma, but again, he's Michael Myers, and this sign appears every time he appears. See, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. And the worst thing about it is, of course, Michael raping Jamie, his niece, and having a kid. That part enrages me. I hate it when horror movies make something as bad as rape a plot device. And for all those reasons, this movie is not only stupid in its own right, but it also breaks the rules of its own canon. And it goes into so many details that are very stupid. Like, all of a sudden some kid joins a cult, and then his mother doesn't give a shit until the end. And then Paul Rudd as Tommy Doyle is a perv. I don't have any other words to describe how terrible of a movie this is. And you can already tell this movie is stupid, and I don't understand why people like this movie so much, or say it's one of the better Halloween movies. It's not. It's not scary. It's not brutal. It's just fan fiction. And easily one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. On par with these bottom two. Which, let's talk about that, shall we? Coming in at number 11 is Halloween Resurrection. This is the one that is universally agreed upon to be the worst of this franchise. And I don't blame them. Definitely, for the time it came out, it was the worst. And even when the remake came, it was still the worst. Even though, and of course, it's worse than 2018 and Kills, obviously. And how do I even begin talking about this movie? For starters, this movie shouldn't even existed, since H2O had such a good climactic ending, and this movie completely ruined it. And based on the title, Halloween Resurrection, you'd think that Michael would come back. But really, it doesn't. Yep, that's right. This is false advertising. So, Halloween Resurrection does not deserve this title. It should have been called Halloween Retconned, which even Sir Plaster Uzumaki, the Carnage God, agrees on that. And it does one of the biggest movie sins that a lot of bad sequels do, where it wipes out the victory of the last film. Like I said, this isn't resurrection, because Michael didn't actually die, according to this movie, since he ripped out a paramedic's lungs, his throat, and then put on the mask. He started killing for some reason, and then turns out Laurie decapitated a paramedic, while the real Michael was out there in plain sight carrying a butcher knife covered in blood, and nobody gave a shit. And then, when Laurie is about to kill Michael, for real this time, she dies in the first 15 minutes of the movie. Why the fuck would you do that? That's such a big insult to H2O and to one of the best characters of this franchise. And then replacing us with the worst characters, that being Freddy, no, not Freddy Krueger, the rapper, who fights Michael in a kung fu battle, and then they try making fun of the original, and it's like you're watching a badly pasted version of Scary Movie or something, and it's just very hard to watch, too. And they make Michael a complete joke, where Freddy disguises as him, tells him to go away. He walks away instead of killing him. and so many other questionably dumb moments of this movie. And hopefully the fan film, The Haddonfield Nightmare, which is going to be a sequel to H2O, will be a lot better than this. And although, as I said, I can understand why you'd say this is the worst of this franchise, there's only one film of the Halloween franchise I think is worse. But coming in at dead last is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. This is easily one of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. Like, there's so many reasons why this movie is bad. Usually, when I first heard about it, a lot of people told me that it was good, or at least that's what I heard from YouTubers like Cody Leach and Drum Dums, who are like fans of this movie for some reason. I never really understood why. And then a lot of other people told me it's one of the worst horror movies they've ever seen. And then once Sir Plaster Uzumaki, the Carnage God, got to see like the first 10 or 15 minutes for himself, he's told me really bad things about it, said that it was disturbing in a not even scary way, and that just by how nasty it was made him want to throw up. And at first I didn't really think that was an issue, but then when I watched it, I realized exactly what he was talking about, since it looks like something out of a dark web video, and on top of that, the dialogue is still carried over from the first movie, and this film is an absolute mess in every way. It was so weird where they make Michael Myers into Jason Voorhees literally by having him see a ghost of his mom talking to him. For that reason alone, I hate this movie. It's one of the good examples why you should never give a great horror movie franchise to an awesome music video person, because what's going to be next? Marilyn Manson making Friday the 13th? Now, I can actually imagine it and being pretty bad. No offense to Marilyn Manson, I love his music, but that's a completely different topic. Although, then it almost feels so separated from the Halloween franchise, and it spits in your mouth for liking the original. And all of a sudden, Laurie gets like visions of herself with an upside down cross. Like, this isn't The Conjuring, it's Halloween. And how did that curse that was somehow there all of a sudden pass on to Laurie? Even the Curse of Thorn made more sense than this. And then, weird moment, like, when a kid comes up to him saying, "Are you a giant? Can we be friends?" I can go on for hours on why this is a terrible movie. And one thing I gotta mention, what's with the white horse? Isn't telling me that it's where this movie came from? Get it? Because it's horse shit. The worst film in the Halloween franchise is not the poorly written Halloween rehash. It wasn't the forgettable nonsense that was Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers. It wasn't the lackluster Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. And it wasn't the unnecessary parody that was Halloween Resurrection. But it was the weird, spit-in-your-mouth piece of horseshit that was Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 for being unwatchable, badly written, convoluted, and trying to be the first studio's attempt to make Michael into Jason. And I still can't believe I managed to survive watching a shitty movie like that. And so, that's all I have to say. Please let me know in the comments below if you agree with my list. Tell me what you thought the worst of this franchise was, or even the best. And also, ask me if I'm being too hard on these movies or too nice to them. I would really want to know that. So, hit that like button and slash the subscribe button. Otherwise, the boogeyman will come to your house after you survived his Halloween attack.